Every state has its ghost stories. In Tennessee, those old stories don't get told around a campfire to make kids scream. They get told to keep you from making the mistake somebody already made. And Tennesseans are not the kind of people who scare easily. That's exactly why it's worth paying attention when they tell you not to go to a certain place after dark. Here are 11 places in Tennessee that locals will not go near once the sun is set, and for good reason. Number 11, the Bell Witch Cave in Adams, Robertson County. We are not easing into this list gently. If you were raised anywhere in Tennessee, you already know the name, and if you weren't, you're about to learn why the Bell Witch is the only American haunting with its own entry in the Library of Congress. Adams sits in Robertson County, about an hour north of Nashville along the Red River, in quiet farming country, the kind of place you drive through without ever touching the brake. Beneath a limestone bluff on the old Bell family property, there is a cave that locals have refused to set foot in after dark for more than 200 years. It begins in 1817, when John Bell, a prosperous farmer, starts hearing knocking on his walls and chains dragging across his floors, and his daughter Betsy wakes with her hair yanked and her face slapped by something that leaves no mark and throws no shadow. Whatever had moved into that house could talk back. It quoted scripture, it sang hymns, and it had firm opinions about the people it disliked, with John Bell sitting right at the top of the list. Andrew Jackson himself came out to the farm in 1819 and left the next morning, flatly refusing to spend a second night. John Bell died in 1820, and a vial of some strange liquid was found near his body. They fed a little of it to the family cat, and the cat died on the spot. Nobody was ever charged, because nobody could say what to charge them with. The cave is still there, and park staff will walk you through it in daylight. After dark is another matter, and Robertson County farming families who do not rattle easily will not go near that bluff at night. That should tell you everything. Number 10, Sensabaugh Tunnel in Hawkins County. Hawkins County sits in the far northeastern corner of the state, where the roads narrow in a hurry and the cell signal vanishes even faster. On a back road outside Church Hill, there is a tunnel so completely swallowed by darkness that people who drive into it come out describing headlights that dimmed, engines that stuttered, and GPS units that went blank. Sensabaugh Tunnel was built in the early 1900s to carry a local road underneath a railroad line, and it runs less than 50 feet long. On a clear afternoon, it is aggressively unremarkable, a plain concrete tube through a hillside, and you could drive it 100 times and feel nothing. At night, it becomes something else. The legend involves a man named Edward Sensabaugh and a baby thrown into the creek that runs across the tunnel floor, and every version agrees on one detail. Visitors who kill their engines and sit in the black report the sound of an infant crying, not drifting up from the creek but coming from directly beside the car. Skeptics will tell you the tunnel's acoustics warp the noise of moving water into something the brain insists on hearing as a voice, and that explanation is reasonable, and I'll grant it. What it does not explain is the stalled engines. More than a few independent accounts describe people who drove out to debunk the place and ended up walking out on foot instead of driving. The creek still runs through it, and after dark, Hawkins County takes the long way around. Number 9, the Lynnville Railroad Underpass in Giles County. Lynnville is a small town in Giles County in southern Tennessee, and it is genuinely lovely. A historic district, a couple of antique stores, a handful of churches, the kind of place that could sell itself as the friendliest town in the state. There is one spot, though, that nobody local will walk through after dark. The railroad underpass at the edge of the historic district runs beneath an active rail line through a passage older than anyone in Giles County can reliably put a date to. What clings to this underpass isn't really a ghost story so much as a stubborn, bone-deep wrongness. You get halfway through and simply stop wanting to be there, not frightened exactly, just certain you should not be standing in that spot at that hour. Dogs lock their legs and refuse. Horses turn sideways. People who live 2 blocks away will walk 4 blocks out of their way to avoid passing under it once the light is gone. There's no documented history of violence here, no famous killing, no name attached to the place. It's just a tunnel that has made generations of otherwise level-headed people feel, without ever being able to explain the reason, that something inside it is waiting to see who comes through next. Number 8. Rotherwood Mansion in Kingsport, Sullivan County. Rotherwood Mansion stands on a bluff above the Holston River in Kingsport, up in Sullivan County, just below the Virginia line. The original house was built in the early 1800s by Frederick Ross, a Presbyterian minister who named the estate after a Sir Walter Scott novel, so the man was clearly a romantic. What happened to his family was anything but. His daughter watched her fiancé drown in the Holston River on the very morning of their wedding day. The second owner lost his fortune and hanged himself from the staircase banister. A third stretch of ownership ended in a fire that the official record files as accidental and that the people of Kingsport have never once believed. But the thing that has held on for more than 150 years is the dog. Large, coal-black, no collar, no owner. It shows up on the grounds just before something terrible happens, standing at the river's edge, at the tree line, at the end of the driveway in the fog. Then, whatever it came to warn about arrives, and the dog is gone until the next time it's needed. If you're ever out there and you see a big black dog on that riverbank, the local wisdom is simple. You turn around and you go home. Number 7. The Lost Sea in Monroe County. Stay with me on this one, because it opens as a genuine natural wonder and finishes somewhere a good deal darker. The Lost Sea sits in Sweetwater, down in Monroe County, about an hour south of Knoxville, just off Interstate 75. And it is the largest underground lake in the United States, 4.5 acres of water lying in total blackness beneath the Tennessee hills. Tours run daily, and on a guided boat in daylight, it is honestly beautiful. Here's the part the brochure hurries past. The Cherokee used this cave system for ceremonial purposes, practices they held sacred and deliberately kept hidden from outsiders. When European settlers pushed into it in the 1800s, they found the bones of a Pleistocene jaguar, dead for roughly 20,000 years, an animal that had fallen through an opening at the surface and never found its way back out. The cave system is far larger than the toured section. Passages remain unmapped, and the water's depth in places has never been accurately measured. Cave divers who tried the flooded portions turned back, citing equipment anomalies and, independently of one another, the same overwhelming sensation, the feeling of being watched from below. The tours are wonderful. Go, by all means, during business hours. Just don't ask the guides about the unmapped sections. They'll change the subject and keep walking. Number 6. Cumberland Gap in Claiborne County. Cumberland Gap is the mountain pass in Claiborne County where Tennessee, Virginia, and Kentucky all come together in the Cumberland Mountains. Daniel Boone came through here, and hundreds of thousands of settlers crossed it on the Wilderness Road into the heart of the continent. It is one of the most historically significant pieces of geography in the country. It is also, by any honest measure, soaked in more violent human death than nearly anywhere else in the American South. During the Civil War, Cumberland Gap changed hands 4 separate times between Union and Confederate forces, and thousands of men died in and around this pass over the course of 3 years, and the mountain took in every one of them. In 1996, the National Park Service finished a tunnel through Cumberland Mountain, rerouting U.S. Route 25 east underground through a passage that runs directly beneath ground that once served as a military fortification and a burial site. Workers on the night shifts during construction reported sounds the project engineers could not pin to any mechanical source. Knocking from inside solid rock, voices in sections of tunnel that had not yet been opened to the air. Today, it is a perfectly ordinary 2-lane highway tunnel you pass through in about a minute, and most people feel nothing. Some feel something the instant they enter and cannot shake it on the other side. The mountain has been holding on to things for a very long time, and a tunnel does not change what a mountain remembers. Number 5. Huggins Hell in the Great Smoky Mountains. The name alone should tell you how the people who chose it felt about the place. Huggins Hell is a dense, very nearly impenetrable thicket of rhododendron and mountain laurel up in the Great Smoky Mountains in Sevier County, covering a stretch of the high ridgeline between Madron Bald and Gabes Mountain, and it is one of the most disorienting natural environments anywhere in the eastern United States. In the Smokies, thick rhododendron tangles like this one are called hells, and that word isn't poetry, it's a practical warning. The moment you step into one, you understand it completely. The branches grow so low and close that you cannot stand upright. The foliage is thick enough to erase the sky, and the ground underfoot is uneven and wet and buried under dead branches that give way beneath you with no warning. Hikers who have pushed into Huggins Hell without staying precisely on the trail have lost their bearings within minutes in full daylight. People have gone missing in these mountains for reasons that were never fully explained, and not only a century ago. The Smokies carry one of the highest rates of unresolved missing persons cases of any national park in the country. Most of them have explanations, some of them do not. And at night, in Huggins Hell in particular, even seasoned backcountry hikers who know the Smokies the way most of us know our own street will not go in. Not because of any single documented event, but because the place itself communicates something plainly and without any ambiguity, which is that you should not be there once the light is gone. I believe them. Number 4. Brinkley. Female College in Fayette County. Fayette County sits in the far southwestern corner of the state, cotton country along the Wolf River east of Memphis. In the town of Somerville stand the remains of a building the county has been quietly trying to decide what to do with for the better part of 100 years. Brinkley Female College was founded in 1857 as a school for young women from prominent Tennessee families, and it ran for several decades as a respected institution. The building was large and imposing, built in the Greek Revival style wealthy antebellum Tennessee adored, and it should by rights have become a landmark of civic pride. In 1893, a fire moved through its upper floors in the night. The official record lists the cause as undetermined. The official record also lists the number of students who did not get out, and that number, attached to a fire whose cause was never established in a building full of sleeping young women, has never once sat right with the people of Fayette County. No faces at the windows, no dramatic encounters, just the quiet, consistent testimony of people who went near it after dark and came back describing the same two things. The sound of movement on the upper floors of a building that no longer had fully intact upper floors, and the smell of smoke and air where nothing had burned in a century. The site today is mostly reclaimed by vegetation, but the foundation stones are still there, and the people of Somerville who grew up hearing about that fire and hearing the number that came with it do not go near those stones after sunset. That's their right, and once you know what happened there, it's very hard to argue with them. Number 3. The Devil's Triangle in Robertson County. We are back in Robertson County, which, if you've been paying attention, should not surprise you in the slightest. This is Bell Witch country. The ground up here has been strange for a very long time, and it does not confine itself politely to one cave on one property. A few miles from Adams, 3 rural roads meet in a configuration locals have called the Devil's Triangle, for as far back as anyone can trace the name. The roads form a rough triangular circuit through farmland and second-growth timber, ordinary 2-lane roads with gravel shoulders, the kind you'll find all across the county. At midnight, people driving it report their engines stalling at the same point every time, right around the center of the southern leg. It's the animals I keep circling back to. Farmers whose land borders the triangle describe their livestock drifting to the far side of the pasture as evening comes on, refusing to graze anywhere near the fence lines along those 3 roads after dark. Cattle, horses, dogs, creatures that do not share our talent for storytelling or suggestion or collective imagination. They just move away from the fence and stay away until morning. Now, Robertson County soil is laid over limestone, which produces genuine geomagnetic anomalies capable of affecting both engines and animal behavior, and that is a real scientific explanation, and I offer it to you sincerely. I'll also point out that the farmers who live there know all about limestone and geomagnetic fields, and they still won't drive that circuit at midnight. Make of that what you will. Number 2. Slaughterhouse Hollow in Sevier County. When I tell you this hollow has carried that name since before the Civil War, I'd like you to sit with it for a second. This was not a name cooked up by teenagers trying to spook one another. This was a name given by the people who lived and worked in this part of Sevier County in the mid-1800s, and they had their reasons for it. Slaughterhouse Hollow cuts through the hill country of Sevier County in eastern Tennessee, not far from where the logging operations that would eventually spur the creation of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park were doing their most aggressive work in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The logging companies that stripped these mountains did not do gentle work. They clear-cut everything, built splash dams that flooded whole hollows, tore out the stream banks, and left behind a landscape that needed generations just to begin healing. What they also left behind, in certain hollows, in the places where the work was hardest and the accidents most frequent, and the company least interested in keeping records, were people. Not buried properly, not written down anywhere, just left. Men who died in the hollow stayed in the hollow because hauling them out cost time, and time was money. Slaughterhouse Hollow specifically carries accounts going back more than a century of sounds in the night that match no wildlife native to this part of Tennessee, not animal sounds. The accounts describe them, consistently and uncomfortably, as human sounds coming from the tree line and moving parallel to anyone walking the hollow after dark. So, nobody walks the hollow after dark. The name was a warning long before the logging companies ever showed up, and whatever they left behind in there did nothing to soften it. Number 1. The ruins of Elkmont's Millionaire's Row in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. These were the wealthy Knoxville families who built their summer cabins in the Little River Valley starting in the 1910s, and when the Great Smoky Mountains National Park was established in 1934, they were granted lifetime leases to keep them. Those leases expired in 1992 and were not renewed, which left more than 70 cabins abandoned inside the national park, with no one to maintain them and no plan beyond letting them rot back into the mountain. What has happened to those cabins since is where the story turns. Elkmont's Millionaire's Row is a cluster of large vacation homes standing in various stages of collapse along the Little River, inside the park in Sevier County. Some have been partially stabilized by the Park Service. Others stand wide open to the weather, floors caved in, roof lines sagging at angles that suggest they won't survive many more winters. The Park Service does not schedule solo overnight patrols at Elkmont. That is a documented operational policy. The official reason given is resource allocation, and when rangers are asked off the record whether there might be another reason, they tend to pause before they answer. Hikers who camp at the Elkmont campground, which sits right beside the cabin ruins, report sounds coming from the direction of the empty houses in the night. Not wind, not animals, the specific sounds of a building being lived in. Footsteps crossing wooden floors that still hold weight, doors that are no longer even hung in their frames swinging as though they were. Voices pitched too low to resolve into words. The families who built those cabins came back every summer for 60 years, and some were born and died in those rooms. They were told to leave, and they left. But people who love a place that completely, who built their whole sense of summer and family and home around those particular rooms on that particular river, don't always leave all the way. Every June, the synchronous fireflies fill the Elkmont Valley and draw thousands of visitors who sit out in the meadow and watch the light in total silence, and it is one of the most beautiful things Tennessee has to offer. Almost none of them realize they are sitting in the front yard of a ghost town. Almost none of them ever turn to look back at the dark line of trees where the cabins stand, and at the shapes that sometimes appear in windows that have had no glass in them for 30 years. The rangers who do walk those grounds after dark won't tell you what they see out there, but they walk it fast, and they do not walk it alone. 11 places, 11 different ways. Tennessee holds on to its secrets after the sun goes down. Most states have ghost stories. Tennessee has geography, the hills and the hollows, the caves, the river bluffs, the mountain thickets, and it has been storing its history in that landscape for a very long time, some of which does not rest quietly. If you grew up near any of these places, or if you know a Tennessee location that deserves a video of its own, leave it in the comments below. I read every single one. We do this every week, and not only the dark history either, all of it, the towns that vanished, the communities that got swallowed, the people who deserved better than what they got. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Stay curious and stay careful out there. And if you happen to be driving through Robertson County after midnight, maybe take the long way home.